Hey guys, it's Mark and Laura with You Should Grow, and we're back in the greenhouse for another episode of our little garden chats. And today I thought we would talk about planting tomatoes and kind of, the methods that work the best for us and what you should put down in the hole. You hear a lot of talk about people who put things like Epsom salts and like banana peels, and I've heard about like an entire raw egg being put into the hole. And so I don't know, to me that sounds a little bit like old wives' tales. What do you think?
Well, I think they all have a root in something that the plant needs at some point, or to attract something the plant needs at some point. But a lot of it is just left over from something somebody's grandpa or grandma did, and they've just always done it that way. Epsom salt seems to be the one around here that everybody seems to think is the cure-all for everything.
Yeah.
Put some in the hole with the plant and it'll grow fine.
Like it's some kind of magical thing that goes in there.
Yeah.
So Epsom salts is magnesium, what is it, citrate?
Don't put me on the spot.
I don't know why I can't remember it, because I know what it is. Magnesium something. It's a magnesium salt. And magnesium is one of the micronutrients that is important for tomatoes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, it definitely needs magnesium. It's just depending on where you live, there's usually not really a deficiency in the soil, so it's not adding much to it.
So the other thing about adding magnesium in the soil, especially with tomatoes, is magnesium is going to compete with other nutrients in the soil like calcium, and sometimes actually having too much magnesium can lead to problems like blossom end rot.
Yeah.
And why would somebody say, okay, we should put lime in the tomato hole, and the only thing I can think of is calcium? Or they don't understand how lime works to adjust pH, and they don't realize it'll take a long time.
Or the magnesium, depending on the type of lime they're using, or different stuff.
And typically we use lime to change the pH, so bring it up, right? No, down. No, up.
pH will bring it up.
Yes.
We have a clay, acidy soil around here, and it tends to drift down, especially if you don't keep the organic matter, if you don't do a lot of green manures and kind of keep the soil living, it will drift down.
So I've heard lime, I've heard of Epsom salts, which we talked a little bit about.
Sorry.
You are bad. You should have silenced that.
Eggshells.
Eggshells. So eggshells would be supplying calcium that people, so a lot of time, and the reason everybody worries about calcium with tomatoes is
Blossom end rot.
Does blossom end rot come from a lack of calcium in the soil, though?
No.
Hey. So
don't listen.
Yeah.
Read deeper. Pay attention. It's not what it seems it is.
So yeah, some of that's based in truth, but that could be a whole separate video we could talk about another time. Blossom end rot.
And we're talking about what we're putting in the hole again.
Yeah. So eggshells, no reason to do that.
I wouldn't say there's no reason to do that. Once you pull up some plants at the end of the season, you start seeing those tiny roots kind of grow into that eggshell, and they just kind of get happy. And again, it's an organic setup where you can colonize bacteria. And I think there's definite benefit. That's what I'm saying. I think a lot of this stuff people put in there, just because I'm not familiar with it, doesn't mean there at some point was some real benefit to it.
What about a whole egg?
I couldn't condone that, and that's something people do.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
A whole egg. But I guess the roots would grow through it, maybe. Yeah. If it was soft enough. I don't know. I don't understand the egg.
People have learned over time that there's nutrients in everything around us and everything out there. Some either feed bacteria that make the situation more beneficial. Some actually break down and provide the nutrients. And where they live, whether it's Native Americans sticking fish down by the corn, or whether it's gathering and washing seaweed and grinding it up and putting it in with your soil. I mean, it's people who utilize whatever is around them and recognize that there's value to that.
Yeah.
But some of it does sound kind of kooky, and some of it gets done just because that's what's always been done.
Like there's this Pinterest pen that's like 8 things you should put in the hole when you plant a tomato for the best tomatoes ever. And I'm just like, they're just going to take everything that somebody had good success with and put it on the internet and then say, do all of these things. You know?
Yeah.
And then you kind of think, okay, well, if they're adding Epsom salts and they're putting in eggshells and they're putting in maybe lime and they're putting in a banana peel. I mean, they're actually adding a lot of things that are huge, but I wouldn't expect the result to be as drastic on that first tomato plant.
Yeah.
But maybe it is. Maybe we should just try it. We shouldn't knock it till we try it.
No, that's okay. I'll let them try. And I'm just, we kind of know what works for us. Not that I'm not open to some new stuff, but I'm not.
So, what are some of the things we should do? I have some opinions.
For
when you plant a tomato, like, I think it's more important what you do to your soil than what you put in the hole. And I think it's more important how you plant your tomato than what you put in the hole.
Well, we do a lot to prepare the plant before we plant it out. I mean, these aren't ready to go, but like, here's a 50 cell tray right here, and we usually plant from here when we get ready. The tomato plants are anywhere from, for a standard, a regular height tomato, are about yay high. I mean, they vary from here, and if we plant late, they may be this tall. They won't be very pretty, but they'll be really tall and leggy. And then we go through, before we go to the field, we'll trim them all up so that just the top of the plant has foliage on it, and we have a stem. And we'll take the entire tray and we'll do a soil drench, dip it in a tub, and then we'll also turn it upside down and dip the entire tray into surround. Surround's the main thing, which will provide some protection for the leaves in the sun when you get it out. That same drench goes into the soil. I don't know how preventative it is, but some of the smaller organisms tend to not be a fan of surround.
So surround is like clay or something.
Kale and clay, I think, is the primary. So it's mainly like a suntan sunscreen.
It's a white powder, and we mix it with water until it makes like a milky, looks like milk. And then you dip it on the leaves, and that helps protect them from sunburn, and it does help protect from other things, except it just washes off when you with rain or water.
It helps reduce their stress when they go in the hole. I mean, the main thing need to be in the hole is a good balanced fertilizer, not a ton of it. If you're going to plant a plant that's 8 or 10 inches tall and you're going to plant it down, a few inches deep, I mean, the main thing you need is just a good general strength fertilizer, because what you're trying to do is trying to get the roots, as they reach out and look for sustenance so the plant can grow, let them find goodies and deposits in there that they'll like, and like the pelletized fertilizer and just any type of good. And organic matter is always good to introduce. Yeah, worm castings, that's one I love to put in. In fact, that's a good one, depends on how your soil is. If your soil's not that great and you're going to dig a hole for your tomato, I know the truth of it is you may only get a little bit in the ground, and you're doing your best to get a hole this big to plant your tomato and keeping your fingers crossed. I get that. We've been there, done that. We've all got to deal with whatever situation we've got. But the worm castings mixed in with the soil, and if you'll take the worm castings and kind of mix them in with your pelletized fertilizer,
and maybe some mycorrhizae.
Yeah, and then you can kind of spoon it in there. And what we used to do is, once we made the hole or decided it was going to be, we just took a spade and a big spoon of the mixture we had, which would be like the castings, the fertilize, anything else we put in there. Big spoon in and just stir it around.
Mixing it with the soil underneath so that the roots don't sit right on top of just fertilizer. So when you have a tomato plant that's ready to go out, the first thing you do is trim off the leaves from the stem. So you have to pull the leaves because you want to bury the stem as much as you can. So if you can only get a couple of inches, you don't have to take all the leaves up to the top, but you can take as many as you need to get so that there aren't leaves buried under the ground. and the tomato stem that gets buried, and you can actually see them do this on the top of the soil. They'll put out roots from the stem and kind of like little feet going into the soil, and they do that all underneath the soil so that you get a really deep root system, which helps with not having to water as much and making sure they get nutrients.
Yeah.
So bury that stem as much as you can. You can take leave as few as like 2 or 3 sets of leaves on the top. So don't take it down to the very tip. If you can, just take it down. Leave a couple of sets of leaves.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking for a couple things if you're really going to be picky about it. Leave some up top, but the main reason you're trimming up is twofold. One, like Laura said, you don't want to be burying the leaves attached to the plant because they're going to kind of turn to slime, and you don't want that attached, and then the roots can grow out from the stem that you bury. But above that is what often gets young plants is the soil splash. Once it comes a rainstorm, all the pathogens on the soil will splash up on the bottom part of the plant and will automatically infect it, and they get sick before they can even get established. That happens quite often. So if you trim those first few leaves up,
keep them from touching the ground.
Keep them from touching the ground, and keep the ones that are really most apt for getting splashed on. Get rid of them, and you'll cut out a lot of your disease right off the bat.
Something to fertilize them right at the beginning, and you want them to grow, so you want it to be a good nitrogen fertilizer. When we plant tomatoes, other than fertilizer, we don't really put anything in there. Taking care of your soil in general is way more important than whatever you put in the tomato hole. Really?
Oh yeah.
Not having to me. I mean, we don't do that. So.
Some people don't have that privilege, or they're just starting out, and it takes a lot of years, and ours still have a lot of years to go before I would say the soil's really great. But people grow with what they've got to grow with, so.
Nature's pretty amazing. I mean, like, you plant something and give it water, it's going to try to grow.
Yeah.
It's going to do everything it can to grow. So if you're, paying attention to what it needs and you're supplying it what it needs, it'll grow.
Always be mindful that the root system is every bit as important as what's above ground. So that's why picking what you put in the hole and how you prepare your soil is a big deal. Yeah.
That's why I think the soil itself is more important than the individual things that go in the hole.
Yeah.
Because, obviously, and I'm not like a genius for saying this, like the healthier soil that you have, the healthier the plants and the produce that you get from it. So that's not like any secret trick. But
it's not secret, but it does seem magic. I mean, you've got friends, you've seen their soil, you've seen what comes out of it, and I go, how did you do that?
Yeah. Well, that's working on the health of the soil.
Mm-hmm.
That's feeding the soil as much as you feed the plants. Then the next thing, I guess, that you have to start thinking about basically as soon as you plant your tomato is how you're going to tie it up.
Yeah.
Which is a different video, but it's worth mentioning right now because you need to have a plan for that. Because, and this goes back to knowing what type of tomato you're growing and understanding how that plant is going to grow and understanding your space and how you want the plant to grow. So tomatoes don't make faces.
Well, tying up tomatoes, y'all, I love tomatoes. If you're watching this, I love tomatoes. That's a point of anxiety for me, tying up tomatoes. It's a sensitive subject.
Because it's, when you have 1,500 plants, it's an undertaking to tie them up.
And it's the first round's not the big deal. It's having to follow up. And by the time you get to the end, you should have already started over the day before.
Yeah. So anyway, the point is to think about how you're going to tie them up almost immediately because they're harder to tie up if you let them sprawl. You can break them if you're trying to lift them up and change them to a tie-up. So you got to kind of know in advance. So you would plant. So we take the seedling. It's been hardened off. It goes out into surround, which gives it further protection. Mm-hmm. It's also better to plant on a day kind of like today where it's overcast a little bit.
Yeah. The surround doesn't give you permission to not harden off your plants.
They'll still get burned.
Oh man. Yeah.
So a cloudy day or maybe later in the day, it's less hot. so they don't get stressed out from the heat. It's less bright, so they don't get stressed out from the strong light. And they just have a little bit of time to adjust to their new environment before the heat of the next day comes out. So surround helps with that, and then planting, press them in, firm them in really well, and then water them very well.
I was going to say, that was going to be my final thing. It's like, no matter what, the
Yeah.
last step
Always.
is watering them in. That is not optional. That's not, hey, the dirt seemed kind of damp.
Yeah.
That's not what we dip the plants before we plant them. No, you go water them in.
The lime is calcium and some other kind of
Calcium carbonate?
Is it calcium carbonate?
Yeah, that's all the stuff on video, Because then you're not going to edit it out one time, and I'm going to be the idiot on here.